I could also see myself if I were sitting in your class, wondering about myself. And is, AI just going to replace me
Yep.
and what I can do? Um,
We truly are on the cusp of the age of discovery. We will have quantum chips. We will have fusion energy, which will
yeah.
propel this. Uh,
Welcome to the HKUST MBA Super Connector podcast. This podcast features faculty, alumni, students, and other friends of the HKUST MBA community. We explore themes important to our MBA program and our role as a super connector, connecting East and West, connecting business and technology, and connecting profit and purpose. My name is Stephen Shih, and I have the privilege of serving as Associate Dean of our MBA programs. In this episode, I chat with Kurt Keilhacker, General Partner at Elementum Ventures in Silicon Valley. We talk about a course he has just wrapped up teaching here at HKUST. This course is a topic that is on all of our minds. It is titled Strategic AI, Transforming Business and Redefining Leadership. Kurt is a startup veteran. He's co-founded and served as chairman, CEO, or CFO of companies throughout Silicon Valley and internationally. With multi-billion-dollar exits and IPOs, Kurt has proven startup experience, and he thrives on applying it to new and emerging markets. Before Elementum, Kurt founded and invested in more than 50 companies across the US and Europe through Tech Fund and Tech Fund Europe. Kurt is a graduate of Wheaton and has degrees from the University of Chicago, Stanford, and Harvard. Let's get started.
This one.
Well, Kurt, it's great to have this chance to speak with you, and thank you for teaching in our MBA program this February. It's been wonderful to have you here in Hong Kong. Kurt, I thought it'd be just really interesting to learn more about your course. And you've been teaching strategic AI, transforming business and redefining leadership, and was wondering if you could just tell me a little bit about what's that course about and what have you been teaching so far?
yeah, Steve, there really are two dimensions to the course. First of all, is the understanding that AI is going to impact every area of business in every industry. And while we certainly are in the midst of a hype cycle right now, that seeing AI not just as a lowly tool or a high placed tool, but rather seeing it as part of the underlying fundamentals of how we run businesses today, and as the electricity that will power everything, is an important dimension. The second element is, how do we rethink organizational strategy when we have these capabilities, being able to have a granularity of information that we've never been able to have before in real time. And so those dynamics creates an ecosystem that none of us have been trained for before, and all of us have to retool ourselves and upskill ourselves so that we're able to help manage these organizations.
Yeah, this is a challenging course to teach. I think one of the things when we were talking about it was everything's changing so fast, and new companies. Can you tell me a bit about within the course right now? Are there certain case studies you're talking about, or what are some of the companies that we can learn from today?
Sure. A couple of them. First of all, what was interesting is that right a week before we started this class was, of course, the announcement of DeepSeek's
Yes.
solution. And that was really eye-opening, I think, for a lot of technologists and a lot of business people, thinking that AI was going to be this world that would require, a multi-billion-dollar investment in order to be a player in it. And DeepSeek showed, in terms of through their very innovative architecture, that you could take a different approach that didn't require tens of billions of dollars of hardware and training sets in order to have something that was strategically valuable. So that was actually a great kickoff to our course, in seeing how disruption is happening in the AI sector right now in real time. The second element is really about how I'm looking at conventional companies like HSBC,
Yeah.
and we did a Harvard business case on HSBC's implementation of how they think about these technologies, and seeing that an organization like HSBC, of how they could use AI for example, for pricing intelligence, how to have a better attenuation of pricing strategy to optimize the customer lifetime value of their customers. And so you can see whether it's banking or whether it's a technology company like DeepSeek, or whether it's responder of a retail organization that is trying to grapple with these new capabilities and trying to make sure that they are building out a competitive advantage, utilizing these skills and capabilities for increased margins, a wider revenue capabilities, and new markets.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up DeepSeek. I remember seeing you a few days before the class started and talking a bit about that. How can you tell me a bit more, like how has it sort of changed what you think is important here for our students to learn, or and how do you see the DeepSeek development in the future of AI?
Well, there were a couple of monumental things that DeepSeek proved by their getting their technology developed with just a couple hundred employees. The first one was that they were able to determine that there was what's called a mixture of experts architecture that could actually equal with a much more efficient set of hardware some of the largest technology companies in the world. The second thing that they were able to do is to realize that they could optimize the compute cycles that are required in these types of what's called graphic processing units, GPUs, that actually power this. And in fact, the generation of NVIDIA chips that DeepSeek appears to have trained their data on is a much more efficient, much more cost-effective and available chip capability. And that just shows that we're going to see much more creativity in terms of the hardware that's deployed on these implementations. But the last thing, and I think is a really interesting tell, is that they really have demonstrated what's called reinforcement learning for enhanced reasoning is going to be the way that we're going to unlock so much more utilizing AI than what we've ever thought. And rather than thinking of AI as being a very efficient statistical optimizer that strings billions of words together in combinations that actually seem to make sense, if we can actually create the capability of enhanced reasoning from this reinforcement learning approach, that's going to open up a lot of new fields to the implementation of AI being effective and being able to give us insights into our businesses than we've ever thought of before. So what that means for our students is that as our students go out there, they need to be exposed to the various tools that are available right now, and they need to play with them. And this is the experimental phase that we all are in. And it used to be when you had a tool like this that would appear, we would think about, okay, how can I become master of that tool? Maybe when you and I were in MBA schools, we became, really great Excel jockeys. And that was our, competitive advantage that we had perhaps in the analyst programs or in getting some of these jobs of how efficiently we could build out these complex models. Well, the future is not just going to be about, learning one software system, but being able to identify what are the approaches to these problems. How do we identify the core problem that we're trying to solve, and then apply a plethora of different tools that many of them will be AI enhanced that will give us the best solution. And so we're going to become problem solvers as opposed to better equation inputters. And that changes the dynamic of the kind of higher order thinking that we're expecting of our MBA students. And I think UST has a marvelous curriculum that allows for both a great foundation in the fundamentals and the foundational sciences, as well as in terms of applied courses that are able to illustrate how to put those foundational principles into practice.
Yeah, it's really just mind-blowing how fast things seem to be changing and the new opportunities coming up. I am curious. So, you've been a venture investor in the U.S. You've been a venture investor in Europe as well, and spent a lot of time there. And now you're teaching here in Hong Kong. Do you see differences globally in how people are thinking about the opportunities and risks of AI? And has there been anything surprising to you as you've been spending some more time here related to that?
Yeah, a couple of things that are noteworthy. First of all, I think that the students that I meet here and the business people I meet here are much more open to utilizing AI, utilizing technology for efficiency purposes, and for being competitive on the worldwide stage. I think that in some markets, in some segments, industrial segments in the U.S., and in broader segments, perhaps in the European Union, where you see technology as something that needs to be fought with to make sure that the organizational culture or the marketplace dynamics are not disrupted. I think there's less fear here of disruption and more fear of being left behind, which is good. It's good for us to have that in the U.S. It's good for us to have that here in Asia. And that's something that only recently do you start seeing that emerge in the European market.
Interesting. On this idea of doing things for efficiency, right? And I get it, right? Big business opportunities. I could also see myself if I were sitting in your class, wondering about myself. And is, AI just going to replace me?
Yep.
And what I can do? I mean, what does it mean for us as individual?
Sure. Well, Steve, I think, one of the things that we're going to see even more clearly in the future is where well-rounded managers who have both quantitative skills that are married with the soft skills of being able to manage teams, think strategically, being able to have a sensibility on marketing dynamics, on as well as operational dynamics, that those individuals with those multiple skill sets will really transition well in this AI age, because we're no longer looking for only specialists that can only do one output. We're looking for people that can help manage teams of people, some of them that do indeed have specialists and many specialists, but being able to work on a larger project and a larger outcome that isn't just about efficiency. It's about thinking of all the constraints and all of the possible outcomes. I'm often talking to my students about opportunity cost. When, as a leader in a business structure today, we need to constantly be asking ourselves, are we applying the right resources to the right opportunities, knowing that if we don't do something, and as the inventor's dilemma has continually proved itself, that if we're not on top of those things and looking at how we are building out new business models and new innovation, we will be replaced by something else. And again, DeepSeek is a perfect example of what can happen if you're not watching out into other new startups.
Let me try to push you a bit on this one though. So I've heard talk, and I think Jensen Huang might have said this. He's received an honorary doctorate from us this past year. But talks about, every employee will be the CEO of a group of agentic AIs or agents, right? But, what's stopping AI from being the agent that manages other agents, right? And, how do we really think about kind of what can only humans do?
No, that's a fair pushback. I think the reality is that there are certainly limitations about the range of information that a agentic agent can discern in real time by just even understanding human behavior and how we as humans are not always rational creatures, nor are we always rational in the marketplace or as consumers. And it's really hard to program that irrationality in terms of making sure that our agents are always optimizing for the right variables. And so I think that We will have plenty of decades left in terms of for the need for well-trained managers who are able to marry both the hard skill sets of good quantitative skills with the soft skills of being able to lead other human beings in these industrial and business enterprises.
Okay. So kind of moving from, 6,000 years ago, it was about being strong in body,
Yes.
right?
Right.
And then, or you could argue about when exactly, but I would say with the Gutenberg press, that kind of the age of knowledge and
Right. Sure.
the age of mind.
Right.
So being strong in body was critical for a while. Then it was all about being strong in mind.
Right.
Can we now say we're entering an era where it's about being strong in sort of heart?
Yeah, I would say it's actually a combination of two things. I think it would be the strong of heart as we discover more about our world, and so we truly are on the cusp of the age of discovery. We will have quantum chips. We will have fusion energy, which will propel this. In some ways we will have limitless energy. We will have perhaps in our human minds think about having limitless compute power and storage. If I can record every moment of your life and have that in the cloud someplace, we never even thought of what that might mean in terms of having that kind of storage capability. If I'm able to have a digital twin of your DNA strands and knowing about every single cell and be able to model out the interaction with different drug therapies for personalized medicine, we will have incredible amounts of opportunity for personalized approaches for every person in every part of their lives.
Yeah. Amazing. In terms of the course you're teaching, I know one of the things I really appreciate about teaching is I always learn something when I'm working with our students.
Absolutely.
Having that chance to engage in the dialogue. What would you say you've been learning or discovering yourself as you've been teaching here the last few weeks?
Well, one of the things I've really enjoyed, amongst many things, is that my students come from such a range of backgrounds. And, we had a class session last week where we were talking about what does it look like when you're the manager that's trying to implement a new AI system internally in your group. And the pushback that you get, that's natural whenever you're trying to introduce a new part of a workflow to a group. And it was interesting hearing about how, especially we were talking about some of the special situations of state-owned enterprises. And one of the things that some of the students kind of identified was, well, what if the fear of missing out might be actually one of the incentives that someone might have in a group of a state-owned enterprise? It's kind of like something as basic of what we call FOMO, that could actually be a driving force of how you encourage innovation in an organization. That was something that I hadn't thought of before, but I thought that was actually a really, really key and good insight that the student had on that.
Yeah, it's not always just about business case.
Exactly.
Yeah. And if you were to think, the next time you teach this course,
right,
what are things that you would want to further emphasize, or that you think are going to be even more important in the future?
Yeah, I really want to introduce the students earlier on into participating in the problem-solving mindset of a manager dealing with these opportunities and the decision-making matrix that they go through. And I think that by having, one of the things I've just enjoyed about these courses already are incorporating 5 alums in each one of the classes. And every time that one of the alums engages in a conversation, I'm always amazed at their particular insight that they have, which is right on and spot on in terms of its relevance and its immediacy for the students of how they can see themselves 5 or 15 years later dealing with those very same opportunities at a different level in the organization. So I think exposing those students earlier on to those problem sets that puts them in the mind of that manager, I think would be one thing that I would do.
And just on that one, just as you think about the managers and the mindset of managers, and again, I want to go back to your very global experience. Time in Europe, US, working with people here in Hong Kong as well. Where do you come out in terms of differences among kind of executives based on culture and background and so forth versus similarities? And how do you think about that when you work with very diverse people in different companies?
Yeah, well, one of the fundamental axes that I think that we see variation on is our concept of risk. And how do we think as both individual agents and corporate agents of addressing risk? And I think there's a lot of room for growth across different cultures for reimagining risk. For example, I think one of the deficiencies that we have in the United States of thinking about risk is we often don't think about the social impact of risk. We only think about the individual, and we're obsessed with optimizing for the individual, and we're not paying attention to the social. Similarly, I think as we look in terms of in the European market or the Asian market, we think about innovation as something that we follow as opposed to lead. And being able to kind of put your neck out there and try something, even if it has a low probability of success. And I think that that's something that we're going to see, that actually AI, and agentic AI in particular, will allow us to actually take more risk. We will actually have the capability of having more A/B testing per se across a whole plethora of our business lines that we never were able to do before, and to actually put a collar on that risk and scope it in such a way that it still makes our risk management paradigms work by being able to simulate different interactions where we're not having to bet the farm every single time.
Yeah. Fascinating opportunities for us with the new wave of AI coming up. Maybe just to wrap up, Kurt, and I know you've been talking with a lot of our students and had a chance to get to know them. If you were trying to synthesize some of your perspectives on AI and how it's changing business and the opportunities and risks, as well as having seen and worked with a lot of very successful people in business, what would you encourage our students to really remember and think about as they're kind of thinking about their next 20 to 30 years of their career? And if you had to leave a message.
Yeah, I think, the message is that your career is a marathon. It's not just a few sprints that are sequenced one after the other. And so what that means is you have to ask yourself, what is it that I want to become? How do I want to contribute in this world uniquely? And to see that as a series of experiences that, I can't right now predict what they all may be, but I can predict this. They will be different than what I thought of 30 years earlier. And I think part of the thing that we can best do for our students is equip them with the tools, with the experiences, and with the networks that will allow them to transition those periods of times, and to do it with confidence, and to do it with the humility that says, I'm here to learn, what problem can I solve today in order to make the world a better place?
All right. Well, thank you, Kurt. It's been fascinating exploring this topic with you, and hopefully in the future I'll have a chance to sit in on your course as well.
Look forward to it. Thanks so much. It's been a great opportunity.
All right. Thanks.